up, Nesson Nation? Welcome into Foxborough Rush. Kasey, Hudson, Keagan, Stiefel, but you should better know us as K Squared because I said that I was going to push that, which means I have to be consistent with it. It's the best hour with us here on Foxborough Rush because we've got plenty to get into, and just so you know, you can catch Foxborough Rush Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. here on Nesson Nation, but it's not a boring show. It never is. We've got more Bill drama. I know. I'm tired of it. You're tired of it. But the layers of this, fascinating. Then we got to get into some Patriots OTAs, see what the vibes are, and kind of hear from the guys and see what's been going on thus far, and a few other things. But more importantly, Keegs, what's up? How's it going?
Not much. I'm hanging in there. K Squared is always a good time. I always enjoy it. So I'm ready to get into some football with you. Lots of topics, pretty much none of which have to do with actual on-field football, but we get to start there, which is exciting.
Exactly. We do get to take it back to the field. I gotta check your temperature on this one because sometimes people are just so excited for football to the point where it's like, all right, we've got football. It doesn't matter if pads are not on. Or are you the kind of guy that it's like, all right, I'll be more engaged once the pads get on?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, if you've heard me and George talk during draft season, I like the big guys, offensive and defensive line. That's my thing. So not a whole lot they can do. I think the biggest storyline going into this summer is Will Campbell and how he stacks up against NFL competition. There's a question there, but we're not going to see that during OTAs. They're in shells, just the helmets, shorts, and T-shirts. So excited to see when they get the pads on. But there is some decent stuff you can get, especially Drake Maye, wide receivers, how they're all looking together. So there's some exciting stuff, but I'm waiting for the pads to come on.
Yeah, we got to be able to double check that these guys can start connecting the dots, taking the playbook from the script, translating it onto the field. And while it still changes once the pads go on because of pace and everything else, still getting that IQ solid and ready to go is probably one of the most important parts. We did see some footage, some updates from everything going on at OTAs, and we had Jimmy from the car call in earlier on. Boston has entered the chat. I feel like I said that so poorly because it's Jimmy from the Ca, if I say it correctly. And he wanted to give Drake Maye some heat for throwing 4 interceptions the other day. And everyone else chatting about what's been going down in OTA said, okay, 2 of the 4, maybe not so much his fault. Maybe more so just kind of route running issues and not being as sharp in the connection and the communication there. So take 2 off the board. But what say you to that? How much criticism should we be tossing out without the pads being on?
I mean, day one, installing an offense that is notoriously difficult to run as a quarterback, I'm surprised it wasn't 8 interceptions. I think if anybody knows Josh McDaniels' offense, and if you go back and you think about some of the young quarterbacks and the early training camp stuff we've heard, Jimmy Garoppolo had the worst training camp, like maybe of all time in 2014 when they drafted him, and everybody thought this is the replacement for Brady. And obviously that's what he was intended to be. It didn't turn out that way, but he was terrible. Mac Jones was bad for a few weeks, and then he picked it up, and he, obviously the best football of his career has come in a Josh McDaniels offense, but that's because they tailored things around him. They went from utilizing Cam Newton to Mac Jones, so they really had to kind of change things to work for him. I think we're going to see that adjustment period with Drake Maye, but there's no doubt in my mind he's going to pick things up, especially, Stephon Diggs is on the field running those routes instead of somebody like Kyle Williams, who's a rookie, and he's getting used to this offense as well. And you're getting a little bit of familiarity with the defense you're playing against and the rapport you can build with these wide receivers. It's not going to stay this way. So right. 4 interceptions during day one absolutely could not matter less. He's learning the offense. So I'm sure if they shoved anybody but Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes in, he wouldn't have looked that great. It's just the way things go early in OTAs. If we never had anybody down there in terms of the media, no one would have heard about it. So not a big deal at all.
Very true. I'm sure he's not making a stink of it. And it's not anything to panic over. Like you said, I mean, you're talking about a very intricate system. But a connection that hasn't been severed or slowed down, per se, is between him and Hunter Henry. We know that big guy is typically your safety net when you got to get the job done. Hunter Henry talks about, Josh McDaniels' system being implemented. And, of course, his buddy Drake Maye. Check out the soundbite here.
I think he's acclimating great, man. I mean, it's a lot, and it's really early. I mean, it's only May, man, and we just got together a month ago and put this all in. So there's a lot thrown at the wall right now that we're trying to make stick. And I've been in this scheme, but I haven't been in this scheme with all these guys. So we're trying to, mesh this well, and it takes time, man. It takes a lot of time. That's why we're out here. That's why we're out here competing. That's why we're trying to get better, and that's what it's all about. Because especially on offense, we got to be in tune. We got to be connected, and just trying to get better every single day.
That's what I was going to ask you, because you have been in the scheme before. Have you given Drake any tips, or has he come to you, asked anything? I know obviously he's a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean it's different, but some things there's things I can help, and in some aspects I feel like I know the scheme well. Obviously, there's still things I'm learning and trying to grow upon. I mean, even if we were in the same scheme from last year, I would still be growing in the aspect of like just deeper knowledge. And but I'm always there to help and try to help Drake in any way I can.
The growth helps with the gains, and a guy who is familiar with it, of course there's going to be some changes because you've got other pieces that now have to plug into this system and make it make sense, right? So what do you make of Hunter Henry getting reacclimated into the system more so, and where he can grow from his season last year and what bring to the field this year?
Yeah, his best season in New England was that first year with Josh McDaniels, and he was really great with Mac Jones, and it's something I've talked about on the show before, where Hunter Henry's ability to work with the amount of quarterbacks he's worked with, but also the fact that they're younger quarterbacks, and he's really kind of bringing them along with him, hasn't been talked about enough. I think he's done a fantastic job at that, so you give him a little bit of credit for that, but now that he's moving back into an offense that he's probably more familiar with and more comfortable with than the last couple that they've run, I think it's a great thing. And I mentioned it before that sound. I'll mention it again after. Josh McDaniels tailors things around his players. There are things that he ran with Tom Brady that he won't run with Drake Maye. It's probably a little bit easier now, too, because Drake Maye, obviously a better athlete than Brady was. Brady knew the system so well that he was able to change things and kind of put them in a position to succeed on every rep. You might not get that with Drake Maye, but there are things that you get with some guys, things you don't get with others. So I think him being able to tailor it a way that we've seen, with Newton in an athletic quarterback, you have that with Drake Maye. So maybe being able to implement some of those things, as well as some of the stuff that he's used in the past with the double tight ends. We're going to see Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper on the field together with those outside wide receivers that they haven't had in a very long time. Kyle Williams, Stephon Diggs, being able to implement stuff like that and really taking little pieces from each offense that Josh McDaniels has run in New England and putting them all together on the field. You're not going to see it yet. It's going to take a while, but I think once training camp rolls around, later stages, once the preseason kicks off, you're going to start to see that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think something that fans maybe might not be able to be as patient about is seeing, what this potential offensive line will look like for the upcoming season. I think we're all looking for just an edge more of confidence to say, okay, this line can protect Drake Maye and allow these plays to progress the way that we need it to so that this team can pull off 7, 8, 9, 10 wins. Some people, like George, going as far to say 11 and 12 because his mind has changed. But what have you seen in OTAs so far, or probably heard, that could make you feel like slightly more confident about what the O-line could produce?
I think the fact that they have guys who probably aren't going to be long-term starters starting right now is a good sign.
Yeah.
You've got all of the veterans in with the quarterback. And I think the one thing that does is it takes a little bit of the pressure off his plate early. And then once he starts to learn the protections and the calls and he's getting familiar with that, that's when you can introduce these younger guys. Jared Wilson is their starting center of the future. He has not been the starting center throughout the early days of OTAs because he's just not ready in terms of the mental aspect. He only started 1 year at Georgia. Garrett Bradbury's been a starter for the last 4 or 5 years in Minnesota. So you want that veteran experience in front of Drake Maye. That's what's there right now. But the second Maye is ready, and obviously the offensive linemen, Jared Wilson, Layden Robinson, guys like that, as soon as they're ready, they're going to slide them right in. And I think that's when you start to see the ceiling that this unit can have. Morgan Moses on the right side with Mike Onwenu, they're going to be there. And, without injuries, those are the two guys on the right side. Will Campbell, he's your left tackle. But in the middle and at left guard, a position that's really important, one that you don't think about in terms of importance is left guard. But in this offense, with the amount of pulling that they do on pass and run concepts, you need an athletic left guard. You need a guy who's not just a mauler like we saw with Layden Robinson last year. So maybe Cole Strange can slide in. I think there are so many variables that are going to go into this that are really, interesting. We're going to see those start to develop throughout the offseason. But knowing that they don't just have one group, and if anybody gets hurt, they're screwed. They've got guys who can slide in, and they've got a development plan for these younger, long-term prospects that they've got this offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to let you cook on something for a minute before we throw to something. Your ideal what this line ideally looks like week 1. Like, if you get to choose, you're that guy, what this offensive line will look like. But speaking of learning, we got Morgan Moses talking about Will Campbell learning and all the things over at OTA. Check it out.
Man, it's the way he approaches the game, man. He's eager to learn. He asks questions. Every day he's like, bro, can we get some sets? And just talking football. You know, his locker's right beside mine, so we get to talk about football all day. And obviously he's a stud, man. He's played great football in college, and so now he's just trying to figure it out where, like, you know, every week you're going against somebody that has a guy. So, you know, just fine-tuning, not trying to change stuff, but just fine-tuning the things he's learned in college and taking them to the NFL and just on the field and getting challenged every day.
I love that word, fine-tuning. That puts my nerves a little bit more at ease, you know, because that means that you're not starting from scratch, that the progress isn't too far off. It just feels like, hey, especially when you've got such a mental monster in Will Campbell. I mean, everything that we saw leading up to the draft, everything that we heard after the draft, I feel like this guy is really standard and stands behind everything that he has put out there for Patriots fans. But what kind of confidence do you get from Morgan Moses being like, hey, we're just fine-tuning this guy?
Yeah, Mike Vrabel talked about it all throughout the early portion of free agency, but he talked about having guys that you know can be leaders for these younger players. That's what they were focused on. And Morgan Moses, I don't know if he wants to get into coaching. I don't know if he wants to get into motivational speaking, whatever he wants to do when his career ends, but he can do it. He's that kind of guy where you hear him talk and I'm ready to be like, all right, Morgan, what do you want me to do? Let's go work out. You know, he has that ability to galvanize a group, but also give that one-on-one mentorship to a guy like Will Campbell. Obviously, he's been around for a very long time. So I think that's really cool. It's something they haven't had in a long time. I don't think they've had 2 set-in-stone starting tackles. It's been 5 or 10 years. It's been a long time. You know, Nate Solder and Sebastian Vollmer was a long time ago, and they haven't had something to that level since. So if Will Campbell can be your starting left tackle, Morgan Moses isn't going to be around forever. You know, he's in his mid-30s, but if you can just have that for a couple years and really settle things down around these young playmakers that you're trying to develop, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, you got to prime the pillars before you can build. Did you have enough time to tell me who's your offensive line? Week 1, at least want to gut out a W. Like, who you going with? What you going with?
Yeah, left to right, Will Campbell, Layden Robinson, Jared Wilson, Mike Onwenu, and Morgan Moses. I think that's the most athletic unit. I think that's the strongest unit. I think that has the unit with the most upside. Obviously, I do not think that will be the unit. Cole Strange, I think, in my eyes, is the leader in the clubhouse at left guard. Garrett Bradbury will be, if I had to put money on it, he will be the starting center in week 1. But in terms of overall ceiling, so maybe not week 1, but week 8, week 9, that's the unit I'm looking at because I think that gives them the best chance to win week in and week out.
Yeah, well, you said it. I mean, at least the options are there, which makes it that much more important. But another group where we've got a lot of options is that wide receiving room, or maybe a lot of options. It could be a little exaggeratory at this point, but we know everyone's excited to see what Stephon Diggs can bring to the table for one. And then you've mentioned Williams a number of times, and from what I've heard from OTAs thus far is the fact that you're already seeing that explosiveness out of him. So the expectation may have started to shift a little bit in terms of like how he's coming out the gate. Again, no pads involved, which can change everything. But what are you hoping to see out of this wide receiving room in terms of getting further developed throughout OTAs in the summer and then getting prepped for that week 1?
Yeah, I'd love to see the guys who eventually make the roster go out there and earn it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's going to be what happens because you've got guys like Kayshon Boutte and Javon Baker, Jalen Polk. Those guys, you know, 1 or 2 of those 3 will make the roster. But are they worthy of making the roster? And will they have a role? That's a completely different question. It's something that I'm going to have my eye on. You know, Jalen Polk, if he wasn't a second-round pick, I think many people would believe that he has no chance of making the roster. I like the player. I think he's a good player. I think he hit a point last year where mentally he just wasn't able to dig himself out of the hole that he dug himself into. So with a clean slate, a new coaching staff, a new offense, is he going to be able to start fresh? I think that'll be great for him. If he's not going to be able to, the fact that this is a new system and it is a new coaching staff, maybe they're going to be able to cut ties. I just don't know. I think that's a huge question. And then outside of him, Kayshon Boutte was their best outside receiver last year. They just added 2 guys who are going to bump him down the depth chart. Do you have room for 3 or maybe even a 4th? Stephon Diggs is the guy once he's healthy. Right. Kyle Williams is supposed to be the long-term piece. Mac Hollins is, majority will be on special teams, but he's an outside receiver and he can contribute there. So is there a role for Kayshon Boutte? Is there a role for Javon Baker? Those are the questions that I have. It's more the middle tier of this wide receiving room. The top guys, we know who they are. The bottom guys, the guys who probably aren't going to make the roster, we know who they are. But what do they have in the middle? I think that's an interesting thing to see going into training camp.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on earning it, because those are the guys that you're going to see really put the blood, sweat, and tears in it versus like kind of having that entitlement approach. And I feel like we've seen that a number of times throughout the NFL, and it just changes the vibe in the locker room. But someone that can hopefully bring a little bit more clarity to the wide receiver conversation, Pop Douglas. I always want to call him Poppy, but here's Pop talking about the wide receiving room.
I feel like they brought They brought everything to the room, straight competition in our room, and I love it, man. In every position, we got competition. So them two, we got the 4 rookies that came in, man, they're pushing us to get better. So as we got, people coming in that come work hard, it's going to push everybody else to work harder.
What are you guys trying to, this last year the wide receiver group, I think, was scrutinized a lot. Mm-hmm. As a group, what are you guys trying to prove this year? What do you have to prove?
I feel like if you're trying to prove something, it's like, I feel like you're going to get caught up with trying to prove something. So I feel like, man, just compete. As we compete, we're gonna do better. And I feel like, just get open. You get open, the ball going to come your way, Even if it don't come your way, it's going to show up on film that you're getting open, and, other people can see, and on film it's going to show.
Obviously, Stephon isn't out on the field yet, but what do you think he's going to bring to your room this season?
Oh, yeah, he's going to bring that dog. He probably the one who brings out that attitude in the room. You got a lot of quiet right now in the room, but I feel like he's going to bring that dog out in the room.
Just get open. You know what I love about that most, Keegs, K-squared? I love that because defense had themselves a day. And it looks like this Patriots defense is going to be a little bit more competitive, and that's going to, rise to the hopes of what Patriots fans were looking for. So this wide receiving room, they're going to have that competition coming at them from the other end. And Gonzalez had himself a day during OTAs. So is this defense taking a step in the right direction to challenge this wide receiving room so we can see who actually earns it?
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of the way they built this roster. It's a lot easier to build up a defense with veteran players, guys who are versatile, younger players you can bring in and play in a bit role than it is to build an offense, because these wide receivers we've seen year over year over year, if they're not getting the ball, maybe they're losing confidence, or if they make a couple bad plays, they dig themselves into that hole that I talked about with Jalen Polk. So they have a great defense on paper, and they've got guys in the secondary who can compete on every down. So if you have somebody who surprises on the offensive side of the ball, and Efton Chisholm is a guy that fans are really excited about, if he can go win some one-on-ones against Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez, maybe you talk about keeping him on the roster instead of some of the guys who maybe have a better pedigree behind them. So it's a good way to build a roster where you're building competition throughout training camp, and whoever's winning is going to earn their way onto the roster.
And what you've seen so far out of the defense through OTAs, do you feel like that's trending in the right direction? I could be biased, Carlton Davis, Tampa Bay, and we know, I'll throw that in there in the mix anytime. Sorry, football fans, but hey, I've seen CD do some great things in the backfield.
I think their defense, like I said, on paper, can be one of the best in the NFL. With the way Terrell Williams likes to run things and what they built on the front lines, they're going to be disruptive. And the secondary, obviously, like I mentioned, with the talent, Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Carlton Davis, those 2 veteran safeties, Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers, with a lot of depth behind them as well. The middle ground is a question. At linebacker, I don't really love what they've put together, but everything else, they can be disruptive and they can cover. And what do you need to do in the NFL to win games? Be disruptive and cover, force some turnovers, and I think they can do that. So I think they can be one of the better defenses in the NFL. Can the offense back them up? Can they put it together and win some football games? That's what needs to be answered.
I sure hope so, because as we know, I keep going on and on and on about Tampa Bay, but I have no issue with rooting on the Patriots, but when I first fell in love with football, I was a defense gal, and more importantly, I was a John Lynch gal. I like to see the heavy hitting out there, and I want to see some heads roll in the defense. I think that it's a tone setter, but
You've got two guys back there, Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers. They can do that, so.
Exactly. So high hopes on my end. That's where you'll get me on board, Patriots fan. Let me see some heavy hitting and trust those two guys. But Keagan and I get to talk with Matt Lively on the other side of this quick break. Make sure you stay with us here on Foxborough Rush because we got players getting paid and we got to get into the nitty gritty of all that. So don't go anywhere. Join us on the other side of this quick break. Welcome back into Foxborough Rush here on Nesson. We were just talking about, well, most things in OTAs for the Patriots. And of course, I was nerding out about being a defense girl in my John Lynch days. And I know nobody asked for all of my Tampa Bay memories, but sticking with the defensive conversation before we move on to players getting paid. What do you like? What have you seen out of Christian Gonzalez? Because we're getting this vocality of like how he's stepping up as a leader. We're hearing great conversations out of him from OTAs and even leading up to. He's kind of becoming one of those energy guys when it comes to the Patriots.
Yeah, with how they built this defense and what they did in the offseason, they made it so opposing offenses can't run from Christian Gonzalez, which is something that we saw toward the back half of last season where quarterbacks just weren't throwing in his direction. You know, you can take away our number one receiver, but we're going to kill you with our number 2 or our number 3, our slot guy. They can't do that anymore because, like you mentioned earlier, Carlton Davis is now on the other side of the ball. So having a second corner that can take away a target all by himself, and maybe with having some safety help over these on the tight ends and slot receivers, and just doubling those guys up and really leaving offenses open to throwing the ball toward Christian Gonzalez, I think he's going to have a monster year. He should anyway, in terms of what we've seen in the past and his ability. You know, the Denver Broncos did this 2 years ago where they signed and they drafted and they developed guys around Pat Surtain, and that allowed him to have more opportunities to play on the ball and really just eliminate one side of the field. That's what great corners do. And now I think the Patriots are going to be in a position where Christian Gonzalez is going to have that opportunity as well this year. I expect him to take full advantage of it. Obviously, it's easier said than done. I'm not out there trying to cover Jamar Chase. He is, but I think he has the ability to do that. He's one of the best in the NFL already, and now he's going to have the opportunity to show that. There's some primetime games this year, some great wide receiver matchups, so I'm looking forward to seeing him get out onto the field. And really, this is his time to take that year 2 jump. This is year 3 for him, but he got injured, 4 games into his rookie season, missed all of that. Last year was really the training ground. Now it's the proving ground. Show what you're able to do on a big stage at the highest level.
Yeah, like they say, it's time to answer the call. But imagine how cool you are to just be that guy, that dude that instills fear to the point where teams don't want to throw in your direction. Like, what kind of energy is that? That's the biggest energy that you can have out there. But we actually have Christian Gonzalez talking about being a leader and what it means to him and a lot more right here.
As most people know, I'm more of a low-key, I don't really talk a lot type of guy, but, everybody leads differently. Everybody can lead, talking-wise, everybody can lead through playing. So, I'm just going to continue to be myself, not change up or anything, but, just if there's certain things, the more I've been in the building, the more I've been around football, the more I'm starting to learn, the more I can, help the rookies when they have a question, help not even the rookies, anybody else that has a question. So, yeah.
Well, I guess maybe that's a better way to look at it. Do you feel more empowered now, even though you're still you're relatively young, a couple of years in the league? Do you feel more empowered now, having been here for a couple of years?
I mean, not really. I still got a lot to prove. But if I feel like if somebody want to come ask me something, they can definitely come ask me something.
It's always the quiet ones, the scariest ones, and that would just continue to add to the conversation of no one wanted to throw in his direction. But it's the humility that kind of jumps out to me the most. Like when you know that you're capable of being the athlete that your team needs you to be, yet you don't have to shoot off your mouth a lot. And I typically cover a sport where chirping is a key thing. That mental worming into the brain of your opponent is probably something that makes you a little bit better of a player sometimes, but it's not necessary for a guy like him. What I also like about this, and you've kind of layered and spoke to the fact of what this defense has been built to do, how is that going to make Drake Maye that much better? Like, how much can we actually put more of an expectation on Drake Maye to go against this kind of defense in practice? Yeah,
I think first and foremost, when you're throwing against Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, and guys who aren't just good playing within a system, a team system, but in one-on-ones, it's going to make you better. And I think it's going to give not just Drake Maye, but his receivers and the offense as a whole an opportunity to build, a rapport against certain coverages and certain kind of corners. They're two very different corners, Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, and obviously the other guys they have around, Marcus Jones, these slot options. So it's definitely going to make him better. And then on game days, give him as many whacks at it as you can. If you can go create turnovers and give him an extra possession or 2 extra possessions in a game, that's when we've seen him at his best. It's Drake Maye in situations to close the half, or one last drive before they pulled him. They were never in close games, but one last drive before they pulled him and threw in the backup because they didn't want him to get hurt. That's when he played at his best, when it was just reckless abandon. We need to go score. We want to see what you got. And that's when he played at his best. So I think he's going to have more opportunities to, coming off a turnover, you've got all the momentum on your side. Let's go put some points on the board and try to put this team away. He'll have opportunities to do that this year. And that's really what you're going to see, or when you're going to see what you have in Drake Maye. I really like the idea, too, of in practice when you've got a one-on-one. And Christian Gonzalez isn't much of a talker, but Drake Maye started to pick that up a little bit. He started to pick up the, talking to the defense and getting under their skin a little bit. I'd love to see more of that in the heyday of the Patriots, right? Tom Brady needling Darrelle Revis so much that Julian Edelman and Darrelle Revis got into a fight. And then a few years later, Julian Edelman would fight Stephon Gilmore. So if you've got these kind of relationships between your players, I think it's a great thing. Those never last, right? The little tussles on the field. But Tom Brady getting under your skin, Drake Maye maybe getting under somebody's skin. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it adds to it. It's an attitude thing, and it translates differently when you do go against an opponent versus your teammates. And it's just one of those heat of the moment things. But I think it's character building for one, because it helps you manage it when you're in game time situations from a different degree. But I love that you point that out to be a thing, because the next part of this that I'm so curious about, and we haven't touched on it much, so I'm ready to dive in, because guys, they picked up my dude. Henderson is who I was screaming from the mountaintop since day one, because that's all I wanted in the running back conversation. And this is a defense, from everything that you have described, where we can see, how is this guy going to rip and run in this Patriots system? Please talk this up so that I sound like a genius for saying the only running back I want is Henderson. If you didn't agree with it, still make it sound good.
This is the perfect person to have on the show, because the only team I root for in the world is the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I have been beating the drum for TreVeyon Henderson, not just in New England, but to find himself in a situation where they're going to use him correctly.
Right.
And Ohio State didn't really use him correctly. Not that they would have known, but early in his career, they tried to make him a bell cow running back. And he would break down toward the end of seasons, because when you're giving a guy the ball 250 times a year, and you're getting all those hits on him, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
So they brought in Quinshad Judkins last year. Quinshad Judkins was their early down back. He got maybe more opportunities, but when they needed one, right? When the offense needed to get a first down or they needed a score, TreVeyon Henderson was on the field. He was their big play guy. He was their best pass protector. He was somebody they could rely on third downs to run and catch the ball out of the backfield. So getting him into this system where they've feasted with running backs who play that exact role, right? James White was the most recent to have success in it. Kevin Falk started it. Shane Vereen, Danny Woodhead, Dion Lewis, all these guys played in this role and were the most successful they ever were, being, in that Josh McDaniels offense, being that passing down running back. I think TreVeyon Henderson is going to thrive doing that. I do worry that depending on, when Ramondre Stevenson gets back, obviously he's been dealing with the death of his father. He hasn't been with the team. I don't want to see them put TreVeyon Henderson into an early down role and try to shuffle things around, because I think they've built it beautifully. Ramondre Stevenson is your running back. He's your number one running back. He's the guy who's going to run between the tackles on first, second down. TreVeyon Henderson should be your third down back, and I think Antonio Gibson should be the change of pace guy. They've built it great. Are they going to be able to put those three out onto the field the way they've wanted to? That remains to be seen. But like you said, TreVeyon Henderson, in terms of talent and what you're looking for as a big play guy, that's exactly who he is, and that's what they've needed for a long time.
Yeah, that was kind of the sounding board for me, because I'm thinking to myself, if we're talking about a system that's in a rebuild, if we have so many question marks when it comes to the offensive line, you have to have kind of that confidence in a guy that can make an impact sooner rather than later, especially if any relief has to come to Drake Maye in certain situations and downs. And George has stressed this, and many Boston fans that I've seen in terms of like commentary, it's been, how do we get more efficient when it comes to red zone play, and how do we get more efficient to make sure that we're going to find the back of the end zone and not always come down to trying like picking these corners and trying to push these pressured plays to happen versus being like, that's my dude, I can count on him. So that was my biggest reason for that. I know that everyone was talking about Ashton Genty and all of these things, but I was just kind of like, I feel like Henderson is just more of that fit. Like, if you want to go plug and play, but I agree. I don't want them to try to do too much here and move him around and make him a first down or guy or bring him out early, as you mentioned. But I know that OTAs can only tell us so much, but have you heard or seen anything that can maybe back up where we're both going with this?
Yeah, in terms of, they're an install right now. So everything they do is just, let's see if this works. Let's see if we have the tools to make this work. So it's not so much, here's what we're going to do on third down. Here's what we're going to do with the red area. But he's somebody who's proven that. And once the pads come on, like I mentioned, once the pads come on and they're going and they're hitting and they're in red zone situations against the top defense, Travion Henderson is a guy who's going to be key, because he's going to be able to, be in pass protection and take care of Drake Maye. He's going to be able to go out and get 4 or 5 yards on an out route and pick up a first down on third and 3, whatever it might be. So they've got that guy for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. I think it's going to be a while before we actually see it on the field.
All right, well, we've got time because we're heading into the summer days where they're going to hammer out and smooth out all of the details. I promised you guys that we're going to talk about some players that got paid. So hitting a quick break here on Foxborough Rush. Join us on the other side with Matt Lively so we can dive into all the details and see if the market is going to be shifting that much more when it comes to players. Stay tuned with us here at Foxborough Rush. We've got K Squared welcoming you back into Foxborough Rush. And yes, I am a whole adult grown woman that still gets excited about putting two Ks together and calling it K Squared. We have talked about Patriots OTAs. We have talked about the plenty of things to keep an eye out for as, they start translating things from the playbook to the field. And look, I love the guys that I work with, but you just kind of jumped the charts because you were right there on the same Henderson ship with me, except for the whole Ohio State thing, but that's because I grew up cheering for Florida State. It's fine. Continuing the conversation before we talk about some other mistakes, any final thoughts when it comes to OTAs? And then I got a funny for you.
That's a great question. Final thoughts on OTAs. The one big thing that I think is going to be important as we move into the rest of the offseason is seeing where they're at injury-wise. There were a couple guys who were absent from OTAs. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is dealing with something, but Marte Mapu and Matt Collins didn't participate. They were there in street clothes, but they didn't work out. So seeing if they're going to be ready for training camp. Marte Mapu is a guy that already was going to have a tough time cracking this roster, but if he's not going to be, there every day in training camp, I think it's going to make that more harder, more difficult. That was terrible English. And then Matt Collins, obviously, with this wide receiver room, the amount of guys that they have in it, if he's going to miss a month or two, if he's not going to be ready for the start of training camp, I don't know if it's going to be worth keeping a number 4, number 5 wide receiver on the roster, even if he does have that special teams ability, if he's not healthy. So some health things, who's available going into the rest of the offseason, those are the things that I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's actually a great point out, so I'm glad that I asked, because sometimes you don't realize who's really in the pit fighting for a position and how much some of this roster change-up changes that and timing of injuries coming back. Some guys, their jobs are secured, clearly like a Stephon Diggs, but then other guys, we can potentially not see them come the end of the summer. But you know what, Keagan? There's one thing Patriots fans do not have to worry about, and that is Bill Belichick and his honey and the drama that just continues to unfold. I feel that. I feel that to my core, because I had the naive response to be like, the CBS stuff, that was dramatic. That was crazy. That was over the top. Like, maybe things are going to simmer down a little bit, right? And then it's the potential UNC banned her. They didn't ban her. And all of these other things start adding into the equation. And I'm over here like, wow, we just signed up for a reality show that's just going to continue to take off. What do you make of the fact that we're just learning more and more? I mean, honestly, I don't want to be one of those speculatory people that's like, this seems like a targeting situation, but it's the fact that she's had her eyes on Bill for years now.
You say reality show. I think soap opera. Like, this is a live action episode of Young and the Restless. I've never seen that show, but I know it's old people and young people, and that's exactly what we have here. So I would imagine it's somewhat similar to what's happening. It's
The description just killed me.
the relationship itself, and I talked about this with Trav last time I was on. I think it's a little weird, but all the power to whatever. It's got nothing to do with me, not my place to judge. But it is, my livelihood is based off what people are interested in sports, and unfortunately this is it, right? Like, people will comment, you'll see on the YouTube comments when we post this, you'll see it on my articles, no one cares, this stinks, we don't want to hear it. Buddy, I got the numbers and they're not backing up your opinion, because people love this crap.
Yeah.
So, like, unfortunately, this is just now part of my life, and I have to deal with these people. So I'm taking personal offense every time they do something that's newsworthy enough for a story or for us to talk about. It's gotten to be a little too much for me. I don't want to talk about other people's relationships. It's not what I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. I went to journalism school because I was like, maybe I'll get to go to some football games. That'll be pretty cool. I didn't think I was going to be talking about a 50-year age gap and whether or not she's preying on an old man. It's an odd situation that we've all found ourselves in.
It's so odd. Honestly, I find so much peace in you saying that, because each time something new comes out, I'm devastated that we do have to continue to air it out, because I'm not a reality TV gal. I'm not a soap opera gal. I did grow up watching telenovelas just a little bit, but it kept me in tune with Spanish roots, so it brushes up on the Spanish a bit quicker there. But at some point, at least it gives you a good gutted laugh, right? Like, let me give you the one that really, really got me going today. To find out that she potentially, allegedly, possibly, pitched herself to Nike to be Air Jordan. How rude is that to the actual Air Jordan? I don't care how fancy you make your name. To the actual Air Jordan that did the athletic legwork, no pun intended, to make pitches to Nike or make pitches to anybody else or make his own shoe, for crying out loud. Like, how do you come up with
Nike was pitching him because he mattered. This person does not matter, or shouldn't, at least I should say, in the grand scheme of things. In terms of Nike's brand, what is she bringing to the table? I have no idea. The one that killed me was, and this is a TMZ report, they got a copy of an incident report from somewhere in Nantucket around Christmas. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently she attended a party that was being DJ'd by the daughters of Bill Belichick's ex-girlfriend, Linda Holiday. You weren't around for the Linda Holiday days.
No.
But she was Bill Belichick's girlfriend from 2007 to 2023, I believe, 22, 23. Long time. They were never married, but they dated for a long time. She obviously lives on Nantucket, where Bill Belichick lives, in the offseason as well. Her daughters were DJing an event. Jordan Hudson showed up with one of her pageant queen friends. And apparently there was an incident between the girlfriend and the ex-girlfriend, to where the girlfriend had to leave, but the ex-girlfriend was being really threatening. So, she's not totally out of the clear. But I was reading this knowing I'm going to have to write about this, right? Like, this is something that's going to have to be my life for the next 45 minutes.
Unfortunately.
And all I could think about was prom. Being at prom in high school, and one girl's dating another girl's ex-boyfriend, and they've got beef, and all of a sudden all of prom is staring at these two girls in the middle of the dance floor arguing.
Making a fool of themselves.
Except, right, this is a 24-year-old who's out of high school and a woman who's in her late 50s, early 60s.
Oh my gosh. What?
I'm at a loss for words. It's one of the more ridiculous things I've ever had to write about in my short, but, a career that's full of stupid things I've written. That's got to be the dumbest.
It's insane. And you know who wins here? How do you imagine Bill feels watching these two ladies, if there's only two in the equation, fighting over him? fight. Like, he feels like the big guy on the block, as if he needed any other conviction that he was that guy. I mean, now just throw a 24-year-old and midway through 50-year-old into the mix, and you really got a party going. Not my kind of party, but, you know.
No, the worst party you've ever heard of in your life is what that sounds like to me.
The prom
it's just all. Key. It's so ridiculous, and it's so silly. And I think for him, you know, he might feel like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. That's a shot in the arm from that. I think it's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to him in terms of his public image. The fact that he has two women arguing with him, where Nantucket's supposed to be his getaway. You know, you didn't grow up around here, but Nantucket, that's where all the fancy folks go on vacation. Never been.
Heard.
Not my tax bracket.
There you
go.
But
that's supposed to be the place where he gets away from everything, and now they're bringing it to him. I think he might actually see this as, all right, this is getting out of hand. But it was around Christmas, and it didn't come out until May, so who knows? Maybe he loves it.
Everything is just popping out now. But you know what could be hanging out in Nantucket is his boat. And imagine being the ex that couldn't get a ring, but then you might potentially find out that the new girl stirring up drama in Nantucket might have the ring. Bill Belichick's boat further fuels Jordan Hudson engagement rumors. This is a 1+. He added the 1+. He added customization to said boat that I'm just assuming potentially resides in Nantucket to further add to the rumors that say that him and Jordan are engaged. Commitment. He's clearly not that scared of commitment.
I mean, tough for Linda Holiday.
While you simmer on that, I asked the guys before we got ready for Foxborough Rush, I said, have you at least learned any red flags to look out for watching this? Oh. You know, you didn't sign up to cover this kind of drama. We didn't go to school for investigative journalism, but if we had to pull something from it, maybe red flags to look out for?
Yeah, I see. The only issue is I don't have any money that somebody might be after, so I see the red flags. I'm not going to see them in my personal life because there's nothing to grab at. I have no boats to be renaming or anything like that. So, when I eventually strike it big, when I win the lottery or somebody wants to buy my book one day, that's when I'll have them on red alert.
That's when you'll have them on red alert. I sent that to my brother, and he's like, yeah, I got a toy boat that I can just Sharpie a +1 on and make it count. So we shall see. But something that does count, some new approvals across the NFL. And is the tush push sticking around? Find out all that and more on the other side of this quick break here on Foxborough Rush on Nesson Nation. You are watching Foxborough Rush with Kasey and Keagan. Ran through a lot of things when it came to OTAs and breaking down the position groups. Of course, we had to touch on the continuing unraveling drama when it comes to Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, potentially fiance, Jordan Hudson. Her last name just kills me. But you know what? We get to close things out on a high note. To push or not to push, that is the question, and the general consensus that I keep getting is to keep calm and push on. I think the NFL is letting it stay, and that means that some of these NFL teams, well, we're going to see some tears and tantrums because they were pushing so hard for this not to be a thing. But what do you make of it, Keagan? Were you a push on guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited that the NFL didn't ban a play just because teams couldn't stop it. I think it would have set a horrible precedent. And I'm looking at the list of teams that voted against banning it. They wanted to stay. Eagles, Ravens, Lions, 3 really good teams, I would say. And then a bunch of teams who have never stopped it and have never even looked at stopping it. The Patriots are one of them. So Robert Kraft on the right side of history, all the respect of the world. Shout out. Don't try to ban a play because you can't stop it. Hire a fat guy, put him in the middle. Maybe you'll try to stop it. I don't know. There's a skill to be learned for all college athletes. Put some weight on and learn how to get low and stop the tush push, and you'll have a job for life in the NFL, or at least for a few years until your knees stop working, because every team in the world is looking for somebody to stop this thing, especially the ones in the NFC or contenders who will be playing the Eagles, let's say in a playoff game or late in the season, looking to get into the playoffs. So I think it's an important skill to learn for some of these guys. I think it's something that teams need to stop, and instead of trying to ban it, you should, learn to live with it or learn to stop it.
learn to be better at it. I mean, around my household, when my brother was getting prepared to get shipped off for college football, there was a number of terminologies that were consistently used around the house, or phrases, if you want to put it that way, and it was always stay low and make sure you put on healthy weight. If you can't put on healthy weight, put it on this way and then curtail that weight to turn into muscle to these degrees. And trust me, if I had to watch and hear that process one more time, I was going to go crazy. But it feels so simple to the fact of like, just get better at it. Like you said, like you don't want to just completely throw it out the window because it's not something that you can do or match quite yet. I was excited to hear the Patriots were among these teams to give it a thumbs up, to keep calm and push on. I mean, me being new to New England, is this something, have we seen the tush push here quite a bit?
No, it hasn't made its way out here yet. I think that has more to do with the fact that Mac Jones was the quarterback for a couple of years, and I don't think he could squat a pencil, let alone 500 pounds like Jalen Hurts. And now that you have Drake Maye, there was such an issue with him getting hurt last year, or they didn't want him to get hurt, so they tried to keep him away from running the ball, so they never tried it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did this year, though. Yeah. They've got the guys to do it. You know, Layden Robinson is a big boy if he's your left guard. Mike Onwenu is huge, so if he's your right guard. But it's really all about the center and the quarterback, so if you don't have guys that combined are squatting 1,000 pounds, it's probably not worth running it. Obviously, Buffalo runs it to great success, but I saw a stat today. The Eagles in the last 2 years, or last year, had 36 conversions on the tush push. The Bills had 18. The next closest team had 13. So
wow,
get yourself a big boy quarterback. Get yourself a center who can get low and can create some movement, and you're all set.
I'm here for it. Well, that's why I had to ask, because I'm like, I know there's been a bit of a QB carousel since Tom Brady's exit out of New England. So I'm really thinking to myself, I couldn't picture the execution, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. I'm not an assuming gal.
It wasn't the tush push, but Tom Brady, historically, one of the best quarterback sneakers of all time.
I was going to say,
he
the
had
QB
like a
sneak.
94% success rate, so he was killing it. So you don't need to be a physical freak, it turns out.
Yeah, well, it's true. I saw it down in Tampa Bay. So
that's right.
Keagan, thank you for allowing me to crash the Foxborough Rush party. Thank you for being on
Thanks
board.
for having me.
Henderson, thank you for all of the things. Just a big thank you today, and I hope you guys enjoyed K-Square carrying the crown today for this show. As y'all know, Foxborough Rush live on NESN Nation Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. and continue the breakdowns. The excitement is ramping up now that OTAs are popping off, but there's going to be so many storylines, and my favorite thing is the fact that there's a reporter over at the Patriots who has just said that the vibes and the energy are so different. You can see it with every press conference. You can see it all over Mike Vrabel. So I'm really looking forward to the Patriots' upcoming season. And apologies for not having Matt Lively to break down the players getting paid. That was a Brock Purdy transition, but hopefully we'll get a chance to get him back on soon. Make sure that you guys continue to hang out with us on Foxborough Rush and all of the NESN shows. We'll catch you guys next time.